Hello, everyone, and welcome to Passport Necessary. My name is Layla Gentil,
I'm Marcus Rosati.
and today we are going to be getting into fall holidays and festivities because
Yes,
it's fall now.
pretty much.
Might as well talk about it.
Yep.
So, anyone who's joining us for the first time, Passport Necessary is a podcast dedicated to talking about being a third culture kid, which we'll use TCK from now on, and how it's affected us growing up and now us as adults. And
Yep.
eventually we'll have some interviews and stuff, but until then, we'll be talking about other topics. So for fall
Right.
festivities, um, do you have like Marcus? Do you have any fall festivities that you know of that are really big in England?
In the UK, you kind of still have Halloween a little bit. It's not probably as big as it is in the US, but people like it and they do sort of make a bit of an effort. The other one that you have is the 5th of November, which I suppose is a bit later, but it's only, 5 days after Halloween, which is the bigger one
Mm-hmm.
to celebrate. They call it Guy Fawkes Night. Um, Basically because in the 1600s, somebody tried to blow up Parliament and got caught in the act. And for whatever reason, it's kind of remained a special day.
I remember
Um,
learning about Guy Fawkes Day when I think I was in middle school, maybe high school, and I remember thinking, so are you celebrating him? Are you celebrating the catching of him? Because it feels like kind of a gray line.
yeah, I mean, initially it was a celebrating of catching the man because the thing was that it was, what they would refer to as a papist plot. The Catholics are coming and they're going to get us. It's basically it's genuinely what they were saying. And it was a Catholic plot because the idea was to blow up Parliament, get rid of the, um, you know, monarchy that was there, which was essentially Protestant,
Mm-hmm.
get rid of them and reinstate a Catholic monarchy and blow up everybody else at the same time. But the conspirators were caught, executed, and part of the reason you have the whole thing of what they call burning the guy, where you have an effigy of Guy Fawkes and they throw him onto the fire. It's part of the reason is because he was. That's what they did to him. They hung, drew him, quartered him, which eventually also means being throwing someone into a fire. It bits them
Jeez.
into a fire.
Nice fun for the family.
Yeah, but it's still there. There's still something. And it's funny because its meaning has shifted and changed, and it depends on which part of the country you're in to an extent. Some people are much more interested in sort of being very sort of anti-Catholic, safely in quotation marks,
Mm-hmm.
and some people are more kind of going, oh yeah, but it was a blow for freedom, and you kind of go, not really, but if that's how you want to see it, fine.
Mm-hmm.
It's one of those interesting festivals that seems to have taken on a few different meanings,
Mm-hmm.
but people celebrate it. It's celebrated every year.
Is it celebrated with like specific foods, specific like activities, or is it more just like everyone comes together, they build a bonfire, and they burn an effigy of Guy Fawkes?
The Guy Fawkes effigy is part of it,
Mm-hmm.
but there's a huge amount of fireworks.
Oh,
Uh,
cool.
so you have firework displays, and you get them often if you have like if the 5th doesn't fall on a weekend, you'll often have the weekend before or afterwards where a bunch of people will celebrate it then and have all the fireworks, or if and they do it on the day as well. It's one of those things. It comes around, and fireworks are the big one.
Mm-hmm.
Also the bonfires. But there isn't necessarily specific food or anything like that. No, but it is every year it gets celebrated,
Mm-hmm.
and it's uniquely English, I would say. Maybe not British, but English, at least. I don't know if they do it in Scotland. They might do, but
Mm-hmm.
it's certainly very much an English thing. The English do it all the time.
That's so interesting. That's such
Mm.
a like a strange roundabout. Like, oh yeah, this guy tried to blow up Parliament, so we celebrate the death of him every year.
Yeah, but at the time when it was a thing, like in England, the history of it is that basically, under Elizabeth I, there have been things like the Spanish Armada, where the Spanish had tried to invade England because they didn't like the idea of a Protestant monarch on the throne.
Mm-hmm.
So that's a big deal. Nobody celebrates anything specific to do with that, but the Guy Fawkes thing, because it's such a specific thing on a specific day,
Mm-hmm.
you can point to that day and say, we essentially stopped a terrorist attack,
Right.
which was been they were going to blow up the Houses of Parliament. They were also going to kidnap the king's daughter. They were going to try and destroy the entirety of essentially the ruling class in England.
Whoa.
That was the plot.
So wild.
Yeah, it was the plan though.
Wow. I mean, hey, it's something to celebrate now.
Yeah.
Well,
we still have a government.
Yeah. Well, here in the States, fall, our big one, I mean, obviously is Halloween. Like, everyone celebrates Halloween in some way, shape, or form. Everyone loves to get into the spooky season. Already a bunch of stores have already started putting up Halloween decorations, Halloween candy. I'm pretty sure that actually started in the beginning of September, I would say, was when all that kind of decoration and stuff started coming out, which is really cool. I get very frustrated when I start seeing Christmas stuff already. I'm like, no, it's Halloween's time. Let Halloween enjoy its small time frame of the year. Let it just be. But then once in a while, you'll see little like Christmas decorations, and you're like, no, it's not time yet. You got another 2 months. Go away.
Yeah.
But I personally love Halloween. I think it's so fun. All the witchy stuff, the pumpkin stuff, like it's really fun. So in the States, I mean, I guess it depends really on like from state to state. There's like slight differences. And there's always like how it gets celebrated if it falls on a weekend versus a weekday, because there's also people who do like Devil's Night and stuff like that versus Halloween. So for most people, the way it happens is that they'll get dressed in their costumes. This is for usually little kids. There aren't that many teens who will do Halloween anymore unless they're going with siblings, or I know some kids, they didn't spend a lot of time in the States like me, so they'll go and do Halloween a little bit older because they never really got to experience it as a kid. So you dress up, you go out. You usually go out when it's still light out, especially now. As I've gotten older, I've noticed that kids go a little earlier just because it's safer. So they'll go out, they'll go do their rounds in their area. Some people, especially from area to area, they have like places where they like to go because they get more candy. And then you go from house to house. You knock on the door or you ring the doorbell. You'll say trick or treat. And that's when someone will come out and they'll give you a bunch of candy. Usually there's like different codes and stuff where you know, like, okay, this is a house that we can go to. They'll definitely have candy, and other houses that don't. One of the big signs is if the house is decorated. That's a big one.
Right.
If a house has no lights on in the front, that's usually a pretty big sign of like, don't come to this house. We're not giving out candy. There are some houses where they'll put decorations out, but they'll have their door closed. No one will be outside. It's pretty clear that like from the outside, like they're not really doing candy stuff. So that's a thing. And then when it gets to more adult activities, it really kind of runs the gamut. Some places will, like some bars and stuff, they'll have like a Halloween special, or they'll have some sort of party with music and DJs. I have a couple friends of mine that I know who they have like a full on house party. Like it's so much fun. They'll redecorate their house so that it completely fits a theme, or they'll make it all Halloween decorations, and they'll do like punch food that's all themed. Like I remember one year when I was living in Japan, the ambassador there was like, oh, we're going to throw a party and all the families are invited. I just asked that since it's potluck, please, bring something that will be festive, but that people can eat. And so my mom, who loves to cook, was like, we're going to make deviled eggs, but we're going to make them look like eyeballs. So that was my big task that year, was I got to make deviled eggs that looked like eyeballs. So I like got paint out and I started drawing on it. I cut like olives so that it looked like the eye, like the iris.
Yeah.
It was so much fun. I really liked that.
Well, that sounds good.
Yeah, it was great. And they actually tasted good, which was nice. So yeah.
Keep it.
Yeah. So like Halloween is really big here. It's just fun. It's one of the few nights of the year where you get to dress up, especially as a kid. You get to dress up as, you know, a hero of yours or a figure that you really like. I know a lot of kids will dress up like superheroes or princesses or unicorns or monsters, whatever they want to do.
Mm-hmm.
And my favorite is seeing the kids that get creative, who like make
Yeah.
their own costumes or their parents help them make it. Like that is the cutest thing ever. I love it, especially when they wear like joke costumes where they like make a pun
Right.
into a costume. Like I love that shit so much. It's so cute. But yeah, Halloween I think is pretty much just like the way we celebrate Halloween, where it's like this big party night essentially
Yeah.
for kids and adults. I really think it's only celebrated like that here in the States.
Yeah, I don't think in Britain it carries quite as much. I mean, it's still a kind of a thing, but it's not so prominent. And it's interesting because, I mean, it is a Celtic festival.
Mm-hmm.
It's a very old festival that exists. And I mean, the other one that exists is Beltane, which is at the opposite end of the year. So it's the spring one rather than the autumn one.
Mm-hmm.
But it's interesting that, you know, that doesn't get mentioned anywhere. And here it doesn't. Yeah, it's interesting. I think the Scots are more interested in it, but in a slightly different way.
Mm-hmm.
That they try and revive ancient ideas of what it is to be Celtic.
Mm-hmm.
How accurate these festivals are, I do not know.
Mm-hmm.
Probably not very is the answer, but there are people. I think it happens in Edinburgh or something where they have they celebrate it in a particular way.
Oh, that's cool.
But it doesn't really happen in the UK so much,
Mm-hmm.
which is interesting.
I know that here in the States there has been a movement, especially of people who are interested in Wicca or more like witch-based practices, of doing more traditional, more quote-unquote traditional ways of celebrating Halloween. I
Yeah.
know that's gotten a little bit bigger recently, but I think overall the way of celebrating Halloween with trick-or-treating and candy, like even stores will get into it. Like if you're a restaurant in a major area where kids will go trick-or-treating, like restaurants will have candy for kids, and like certain stores will have candy for kids, especially if it's a local shop like a mom and pop shop. They'll stay open late
Yeah.
to give candy to kids. Like that is so common.
right.
Yeah, it's really cute too. Like
Yeah.
it's just a fun night for all different ages, which I love. I do have a funny story based on Halloween. The first year I lived in Japan. So this was we had just lived in the States right before we moved to Japan. And I got to really celebrate my first like Halloween, where I went out, I did trick-or-treating. I went from house to house getting candy. Like it was so much fun. And I'd never really gotten to do it since I was maybe like 3 or 4 years old. So I actually remembered like trick-or-treating. And then
Yeah.
we moved to Japan, and I remember it was Halloween, or they were celebrating Halloween. It was not actual Halloween night. But my dad was like, oh, they're celebrating Halloween in the big shopping area. Let's go. So my brother and I put on like kind of a basic costume. I don't remember what we wore, but you know, we at least had some sort of costume on. It was pretty clear that we weren't just wearing normal clothes. We go to
Yeah.
the major shopping area, and we're walking down, and I mean, we're always going to stick out. We're white foreigners in Japan, but we're walking down, and people are staring at us, and we're like, what is happening? This is very weird. But we're also looking around, and we don't see that many kids, and the kids that we do see, they're not dressed up. We're really confused. We keep walking, and I started noticing that there were all these dogs everywhere, and all the dogs were dressed up, like in
Oh my
full
God.
on costumes, like princesses and little pirates. I think my favorite one was he
Right.
looked like a lawyer. Like the dog looked like it had arms. It was so cute. But we were still walking around. We're like, what is going on? And we realized that all along the street, the shops were open, and they had dog treats and dog bowls. Like it was all for pets, all for dogs. And that's when we realized,
Oh God.
oh, they celebrate Halloween, at least in Yokohama, in that area, with their dogs. They just dress their dogs up and walk them down this major shopping area. The dogs could get whatever treats they wanted. Everyone was fawning over them and taking pictures of them. And my brother and I were
Oh
like,
God.
well, why did we dress up? This was foolish. Oh man, it was so weird. I mean, it was very fun and it was very entertaining,
Yeah.
but coming from just the year before having truly celebrated Halloween the way I was supposed to celebrate it in the States, to going to Japan and everyone celebrating it by dressing their dogs up was a huge flip of the switch for me. It was so strange.
It is, yeah, it's an interesting one. I wonder what. I suppose maybe because it's a foreign concept, you can do whatever you want with it, because everyone goes, yeah, but that's what they do over there. So, we'll just do it a bit like this here. It doesn't matter. It's a bit of fun.
It was fair enough, isn't it? Funny. And my dad still talks about it. He'll be like, oh, do you remember the time we went out for Halloween? I'm like, yeah, I remember.
You say, oh, no.
Not the dogs. Don't bring up the dogs. And I think that's maybe why I love Halloween so much now as an adult, was that we got to kind of celebrate it depending on every post and depending on who the ambassador was, because it was kind of up to them if we would have like a big party, who would organize it. So really post to post, it kind of changed. But I think that's one of the reasons why I love Halloween so much here in the States now, is like I get to actually like get decorations and potentially get candy and like really celebrate it, because I never really got to celebrate it in the same way when we were overseas. The only time we could really celebrate it was actually at school. We wouldn't get any candy, but we could dress up if we wanted to.
Yes.
That was so much fun. I loved it. It was like the one day you could really dress up and go to school and no one was going to say anything.
Yeah, it does give you that liberty, doesn't it? I mean, I think that's a fun thing about it, is at least it does allow people to kind of go out there and sort of like maybe show a little aspect of themselves that they wouldn't normally show.
Mm-hmm.
But there has that element as well. It's just like, you're allowed to do what you want now. Oh, great. Excellent.
Yay, I'm going to do it.
Yeah. And nobody's going to judge me. That's quite a nice element.
Yeah. No, I love that. I think that is also another part of Halloween that I love, is some people are going to be judgy no matter what, but there is this element of like, good on you. You like dressed up, you took part, like you enjoyed this group activity that is genuinely fun. Like it is fun.
Yeah.
I guess it's not really like a festival, but it is like a big activity that quite a few people will do during the fall, is either apple picking or pumpkin pick. And this pumpkin picking is the wrong word, but like going to a pumpkin patch and getting pumpkins. Those are two things that are like not everywhere, but I know especially in the northeast of the US, because we get pumpkins and apples, that's pretty big in this area.
Okay, that makes sense. But it's a time of year for it, isn't it? I mean, you might as well kind of go out and take advantage of it.
Yeah, and it's so much fun. The first time I got to go to a pumpkin patch was when I moved to Buffalo with my partner, and some friends of ours were like, oh, we're gonna go, do you want to come with us? And I was like, well, yeah, this is my first time ever going. It was fun. It kind of had almost like a fair-like aspect to it, because there were all these rides and things. You could get your face painted, but there was a legitimate section where it's just a bunch of pumpkins, all different shapes and sizes, and you pick however many you want, and they do it according to weight. So depending on how heavy the pumpkin is, you pay a certain amount. But it's really cool, and one of those moments where I didn't realize how many different types of pumpkins there are. There's a lot of different types of pumpkins, y'all. There's not just orange.
Because they have the green ones as well, don't they?
Yeah, they have green pumpkins, or they have green and white striped pumpkins.
Oh, right, okay.
Those are really cute. I think last year my partner and I got little mini ones that we like put all around the house. But we had to put them very high because I own 2 cats, and one of my cats is very bitey. So he kept trying to gnaw and chew on the like stem of the pumpkin. Right. And I was worried that he was going to get a splinter in his teeth. So he had to hide all the pumpkins really high because he's an idiot.
Right.
I love my cat, but he is dumb as a post.
Well, that helps.
But yeah, I think those are like, at least in the north or northeast of the U.S., apple picking and pumpkin picking are pretty popular. But also because you really see the fall here. Like in a couple other places in the U.S., it's not as drastic of a change. But in the northeast, like you see the trees turning colors, and the temperature drops a huge amount. Like, it really feels, I hate saying it feels like fall, because fall is different for everyone, but I guess in the traditional sense of like colors, the leaves changing color, and it gets colder and we're getting close to winter, it feels like a more quote unquote traditional fall in the Northeast.
Yeah. When you notice a more dramatic change, don't you? Because of the temperate climate, you do sort of kind of go, now things are changing. It's going from this period to the next period.
Mm-hmm.
I suppose in the UK it's like that as well. You do notice the changes, because the thing is that, you know, the UK is not that bad weather-wise, generally speaking. I mean, it rains a lot, but there's not a lot else. It's not as if there's like, you know, you're not going from like summers where you're like getting like 28 degrees to winters where you're getting minus 28 degrees. I'm talking in Celsius here,
Right.
not Fahrenheit. But you know, it's not like you're getting those dramatic changes. I mean, the lowest you normally would experience would be something like -1,
Mm-hmm.
but you do notice the changes between the seasons.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Oh my gosh, I almost forgot like one of the biggest ones in the States, Thanksgiving.
Yes. I was going to ask about that. I was thinking, I'm sure we're missing something.
Yeah, Thanksgiving. I always forget about it because growing up, we never celebrated it.
Right.
And I know that's going to sound like a total like oddity to a lot of American listeners, but like, I'm an American. I did not grow up really with Thanksgiving. And even in my family, when we would go back and visit family in the States, if we did ever celebrate Thanksgiving, we never had turkey.
Right.
Because turkey's not really a fowl that you can find easily in Louisiana. I mean, you can now. Everywhere in the U.S. you can find turkeys, but it's not traditionally a fowl that you eat there. You're more likely to find duck. And actually, like in our family, my Louisiana family, if we wanted to celebrate something and we wanted a bird of some kind, we always got duck. Like that was just a thing in our family. So yeah, I almost never celebrated it growing up. Like I don't remember it. I remember once I got a little older, I think when I got closer to high school, we got invited to different families who would host like a Thanksgiving when we were in different countries, but it was never something that my mom was like, oh, it's Thanksgiving, we're going to celebrate this. We were far more likely to celebrate Christmas. And even then, it was never like a huge deal.
Okay. Is there any particular reason for that, or is it just...
I don't think my dad is French, so like he has no reason to celebrate Thanksgiving. And then my mom, I mean, Thanksgiving's not really big in Louisiana. I guess it is now, but like not traditionally, like we don't really, like, not that we don't care, but it's not like there's so many other things that you can celebrate in Louisiana, like Mardi Gras, Christmas, New Year's, like those are way bigger versus Thanksgiving. I'm sure people celebrate it now and it's become bigger, but I mean, it wasn't really in our family. I don't think ever, not that I remember. So yeah, we just didn't really celebrate it. And if we did, Mom would throw a duck in the oven and call it a day, like whatever. So it's funny. My first experience of my first experience at a more traditional style Thanksgiving was the first year, like within a couple of months of meeting my partner. I went to see his parents for the first time, and it was at Thanksgiving. So we went for Thanksgiving, and their friends hosted a Thanksgiving meal. I was so overwhelmed by the amount of food that was laid out. I think we were like 10 people at the table. There was enough food that you probably could have fed 30 people. It was so much food. There were like 15 or 16 different appetizers, all of them different. There was a full turkey. There was mashed potatoes and stuffing and green beans and potato, like sweet potato and all this stuff. And those are the entrees. That's not even including all the 16 appetizers. And then for dessert, there was like 4 or 5 different desserts.
Jesus.
It was insane. And like the whole time I'm sitting there, I'm like, I think I'm going to die, like from just being so full of food. And I remember when we left, they were like, oh, please take more food with you. Like, go with more food. I was like, why is there so much? Like, why did you make this much? You knew the amount of people coming. Like, you did not have to make this level of food. It was wild. It was delicious.
Right.
Everything was so good. And even the food we brought with us, they had some and we had some, but it was just, it truly was kind of overwhelming. Where I was like, how do you eat? And it was over hours. It was literal hours of
Right.
eating. Like, we got there, I want to say sometime in the middle of the afternoon, like around 3-ish. We
Mm-hmm.
didn't leave until like 9, 8 or 9.
Okay.
So we got there at 3. We like snacked on appetizers. We talked for like a while. And then around like, I want to say like 5 or 6, we actually sat down at the table. And that's when we started eating the like main course. And then there was also dessert. By then you're so full that you don't want to move. So you just kind of sit at the table. And then, it was just, it reminded me of the more like sit down dinners that I used to have with my French family whenever I would go visit my grandfather in France. His second wife, my grandmother, one of my grandmothers, she would make like a 7 to 8 course meal, and it was just like a normal like Sunday, like we're having a meal,
Right.
and it was like multiple courses. We were gonna sit down at 3. No, we would sit down at like 5, and we were probably not gonna be getting up from the dinner table until like 10.
Okay.
It was like multi-courses, long period of time. But that's kind of how Thanksgiving is here in the States. It really is like
Okay.
a full day event. Especially if you're cooking, it's a multi-day event.
But it's, if I got this right, isn't it supposed to celebrate the first successful harvest, theoretically, in one particular area?
Theoretically, it's supposed to be celebrating the first meal that was had between the Native Americans and the Pilgrims that moved here to the US. That's like the narrative that's
okay.
talked about, is because it's Thanksgiving. It is thanks for the giving of the first successful harvest, and it was celebrated by having the Native Americans of one tribe joining the Pilgrims, and they ate together and like celebrated this successful crop because the Native Americans taught the Pilgrims how to farm on
Right.
this new land, because they
Right.
had tried before and it was not successful. So this was the first, like, we have grown food and we will probably survive winter now.
Yeah.
That's kind of been bastardized over time, and even the story itself is a very watered down version of what happened, and definitely overlooks the systematic persecution of the Native Americans by the Pilgrims.
Yeah.
Now it's definitely gotten very Hallmarkized. Hallmark is a channel here in the US that does like feel good, happy movies. So it's definitely, those darker elements of Thanksgiving have gotten downplayed. Now in the States, it's seen as a big family time. Like, when you have Thanksgiving, like, you're getting the family together. Like, it's a huge meal. There's usually a ton of people. And you like sit down, you spend hours talking together. Like, it really is seen as a very big family communal time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That makes sense. I mean, it's because Christmas doesn't count as an autumn festival, but I mean, it would be the same sort of thing for Britain. Is that, Christmas is seen as that particular thing that you would do, and that's when you get the family together. And the food you're describing sounds very similar because in Britain they have the turkey with the stuffing in it, and then you have your vegetables, whatever they may be. I don't completely understand why Brussels sprouts are a big thing at Christmas, but they are.
I was going to say, aren't Brussels sprouts really big?
They genuinely are. It's really weird, and everybody goes, "I don't like Brussels sprouts." It's like, why? It's just a miniature cabbage.
Yeah, there's actually a joke here in the States that Thanksgiving is part 1 of Christmas. Well, that's what it's become now, is that Thanksgiving is the part 1 of Christmas, especially since a lot of Americans, they'll celebrate Thanksgiving, and then the next day they'll do Black Friday, where they go out and they go shopping for these like extreme deals that come out. So it's that part of it has become super capitalist and very like, now that you've eaten, go and shop. So That's
Spent all your money?
Yes.
Well, guess what? Get your credit card out because there's going to be more.
exactly. So yeah, Black Friday has now become a bigger part of it, and that's kind of what we kind of are hinting at when we say part one of Christmas, because now that you've had
Right.
Thanksgiving, we are immediately moving towards Christmas because God and buy for Christmas. Yeah, it's kind of weird.
Yeah. I was just going back to sort of the bonfire night thing. I suppose there is that element of like kind of the communal thing of trying to get people together and stuff like that, which is involved in bonfire night.
Mm-hmm.
You know, people do kind of like get together, they do it, and it becomes like, you know, and sometimes you have these big displays and stuff like that. It does have that element, and maybe not family so much, but there's a social aspect to it, which is kind of like getting people together.
Because I'm sure it's like within the community, like it gets organized. You have to have, whether it's the town or the parish, like they're getting together to figure out how they're gonna, set off the fireworks and set up the bonfires. Like, I'm sure that's a big part of like the community coming together to celebrate Guy Fawkes Night.
To an extent, there is some of that. I mean, I think most of the time, most people are kind of sitting there saying, "It's like, please get fireworks that are dog friendly." That's genuinely a thing. Like, if everyone's going, I was like, "Oh, but the dogs are having a terrible time."
Yeah, there hasn't really been a movement for that here in the States. It's even like for July 4th, and people constantly talk about it. And it's July 4th and, of course, New Year's. But yeah, it's interesting. I'm glad that they're talking about that in the UK, because that is not a discussion that's here at all.
I can understand that, why the dog would be upset. But,
It's so loud. Those poor things. My cats, the first time we had fireworks in our house and we had our two cats, they both kind of just looked at us like, what is it? We don't know. The second time, though, one of our cats got really scared. I think because it was a little closer than the first time we had a big set of fireworks, and it really freaked him out. But yeah, it's just so funny because I know a lot of people, when I tell them, going back to Thanksgiving, when I tell them, yeah, I didn't really celebrate Thanksgiving, they're like, oh, that's such a shame. Like, you really missed out, or do you feel like you missed out? I'm like, no, because, a lot of the times you can't really get turkey in other countries, especially the countries I lived in. Like, I mean, in Guatemala, you could get a wild turkey. Doesn't look anything like what Americans think a turkey looks like. But yeah, in Japan, you're not really going to get a turkey.
No.
You could get a turkey in France, but it's going to be a wild turkey. But a lot of the other things that are very like Americanized that people will look for, you just can't find it, or you're going to have to find a different version of it. And I know there's some American families that will fight tooth and nail to be able to still do Thanksgiving in foreign countries, but not in my family. We just kind of did whatever was really prominent within the local scene. Like, if, for in Japan, like Hanami was really big, and we went and celebrated Hanami. And New Year's is really big, so we went out and we celebrated New Year's. But we didn't try and like force parties that were really big for us in the other countries, except for I have a caveat to that. My mom would always find a way to celebrate Mardi Gras, just because being from Louisiana, that's huge for us. We have to celebrate Mardi Gras.
Makes sense. Yeah. Because I just kind of like thinking about this as where does having a turkey come from? I just wonder, just because the thing is, in the UK, it used to be the things at Christmas it would be goose. That's what you'd have a goose. But it became a turkey, and I don't know why. Never bothered to find out.
Well, I know here in the States, turkeys, we have a lot of turkeys that, wild turkeys that lived here. They were one of the fowls that would get hunted by the Native American tribes that already lived here. And so then that was like the bird that Pilgrims started eating too. But I don't know why it went from goose to turkey in Britain. That's interesting.
I don't know. I mean, maybe because people could get them. I don't know. Because a goose is a large bird anyway. So, I mean, you're going to sort of like go, well, if you've got to feed a family, what do? Kill the goose because it's big enough. I mean, that's what you would do. But I don't really... It seems strange to me, particularly with it being a sort of like... Because... I don't know, because I don't know what other countries do. But, I mean, you kind of... I suppose... In my mind, kind of like looking at kind of Christian traditions and stuff like that, you think that something like a fish would be more sort of the thing that would be sort of associated with a religious festival to do with Christianity, because like fish was something that goes into like Easter and stuff like that. Maybe that's a very Catholic way of thinking, and it might be the reason the British don't do it. But
They were like,
it
the
genuinely might
Catholics,
be.
ugh, we hate them.
No,
We're going to
we
do
can't
our
have
own
that.
thing.
Can't have that. None of this popery. We're going to have a massive turkey. No fish. That's it.
Well, I know in Italy for Christmas, we're getting into Christmas. We should not approach it. It is
No.
the fall. But like very quickly, I know that in Italy that having fish as at least one of the courses for Christmas is a big deal. Like having fish is a big part of the traditional like Christmas dinner. I could be totally wrong, but I'm pretty sure I remember hearing that from my partner.
I wouldn't be surprised.
Yeah.
I wouldn't be surprised. But I mean, it's just interesting because like, I've just sudden thought, because since we're talking about the C word, we'll stop talking about
We're
it.
gonna stop
But
talking
that's
about
a
the C
religious
word.
festival.
No more of that. It's gonna come in the winter, and we'll talk about it then.
Yeah. But I mean, it's interesting that none of the other festivals in autumn seem to have any particular sort of religious thing.
No,
But
not really. I mean, Halloween originally was a
yeah,
pagan religion holiday, but it has none of those ties now. Guy Fawkes Day is not religious. Thanksgiving is not really religious. I mean, I know some
It
people
kind of is,
will.
but isn't.
Some people will say a prayer at Thanksgiving, but it's not really like. It doesn't have very strong religious ties. It was more of a show of good faith. I mean, quote unquote, kind of. We're ignoring a lot of the historical fact that definitely got glossed over in the years. But none of the fall festivals really have a strong religious connotation to them.
No, it's interesting.
And I can't think of any that were really big in Japan. I mean, I probably am forgetting some. It's been a while since I lived there, but I don't remember any big festivals in Japan that happened in the fall. Or if they were, it was dependent on each temple. Like each temple had different things that they were in charge of and that they would do for certain times of the year.
Yeah, I mean, I suppose there's a sort of stuff like leaf viewing.
Yes.
But I suppose that's not like a one-day event. I think that's the thing, is it's a long period of like weeks possibly of going to see them.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a long-term event. It's not like a one day, this is the day that this happens on, that we celebrate this specific thing.
Right. Yeah, I would agree with you. I don't think there is like a day holiday that's really big in Japan. I know that there were like people would go to like the mountains of Arima to go and like see the trees change colors, and that was a big deal to go do that. But it was never a single day. It was like multiple, like you would go and watch the trees. Like it was really nice.
Yes. It's a different thing, isn't it? It's an event, but it's a much longer event.
Yeah, there's less
Which is
pomp and
interesting.
circumstance too.
Yeah. That's an interesting thought, isn't it? Really, it's just like there are certain things that certain cultures pinpoint as being a day, and other cultures kind of go, "Well, this is an event," and it might be slightly different year to year, but we'd roughly know when it's going to happen, so we'll celebrate it around this time.
Yeah, that is true. Yeah, that's really interesting. I can't wait until we talk about Hanami, because I have some amazing stories about Hanami. For anyone who doesn't know, Hanami is the cherry blossom viewing time in Japan, which is in the spring. But we will get to that later.
Yes.
I think we kind of talked about our fall festivals. So thank you for listening to Passport Necessary. If you have any questions, please put it in the comments below. You can also tweet at me. My Twitter handle is @LaylaGentil. That's LeylaGentil, with any questions or comments about Passport Necessary. Do we have anything else?
I don't think so.
Cool. Well, until next time, I'll see you, Marcus.
Right, see you.
See ya. Bye.